Hi, everyone. I am Kelly, and this is Two Broads Talking Politics Live. The other broad with me today is my friend Genevieve. Genevieve Thiers is an entrepreneur, disruptor, investor, speaker. So many things, Genevieve. You do so many things.
Confused person. Let's write it up.
The author of Tech Yourself, the co-executive producer and tech trainer for Run, founder of the NewFounders Conference, all sorts of things. So welcome, Genevieve.
Hi, thanks for having me. I really appreciate talking with another adult at this time.
Yes, Genevieve and I have both been stuck in our houses with our kids since March. Good to have some face-to-face, even if it's virtual time with another adult.
Right. So it's wonderful.
Yes. Yeah. So it's been a week. 2021 started off with a bang. There's a lot that we can talk about, but I want to start with talking some about technology and the role of technology in what happened on Wednesday of this week with the storming of the Capitol. And then tech had sort of an immediate response that they probably could have had a lot earlier. And we can talk about whether we think it's at all sufficient and what we can do going forward. So talk us through just at first, just a little bit about your background in tech and sort of where you're coming from in this discussion.
Sure. Well, first I'll say that I'm starting out all my emails and conversations with like, how are you since the attempted coup, right? Did any of us think we would be writing that sentence in our lifetimes and emails? No, we did not. But yeah, I am a tech entrepreneur and started a company called SitterCity.com out of college. And it really, I'm proud to say, we really sort of invented the online childcare world. We took the nanny agency model, combined it with a jobs board and like the online dating service model. And we serve millions and millions of moms and dads nationwide, help them find the safest and best care in their area. And so, you know, I say now that I am a systems designer and systems and processes designer. And I think that's really my biggest thing. You know, I look at things that are very badly organized, systems with a lot of friction, shall we say, and inefficiency. And I really enjoy organizing them. And so, you know, I've had lots of other things that I've done. I've been investing in women in tech. I'm very involved in trying to fix the gap between men and women in tech. But yeah, NewFounders and various levels of activism have been my latest few years. I see a lot of inefficiency in our party. I see a lot of inefficiency in government. And I think that those of us who are sitting around just talking about stuff need to start doing things. You can always doom spread. But if we can look at problems and begin just talking about solutions more proactively, I don't know, our anxiety levels might go down and we might get somewhere.
Anyone who
GenevieveThiers.com. And yeah, I'm an activist now, I'd say.
Yeah, anyone who listens regularly to this podcast knows that I am a doer. Anyone who works with me knows that too. I end every meeting with like, okay, what are our action items? What do we do now?
Yeah. No, it's amazing. Like, you know, NewFounders Conference brought in 2,000 leaders between 2016 and 2019, all just, whether you were in an office or not, you know, like you were up there on a stage or in a group talking about how to fix something. And that was cool, you know, and Run the Series is now on Amazon Prime. That's a Queer Eye-like show that helps women running for lower level races win, particularly women of diversity. And then, yes, I wrote the Tech Yourself Guide, which is the playbook for how to use tech to win, and trained about 1,300 candidates so far on that, women and diverse candidates at lower level races. So yeah, we do things, don't we? And I love your podcast. I'm a huge fan. Thank you for doing things.
Yes, absolutely. Little mutual admiration society going on here. So, all right. So how did we get to this point where we are at, that a bunch of people planned an insurrection, a storming of the Capitol, basically over social media? How did we get here?
Well, let me walk you through it. First thing I will say, though, just to start, is yeah, everybody's talking about impeachment. Everybody's Twitter has banned him, right? You know, Facebook took down some posts. these are Band-Aids. These are teeny weeny Band-Aids on an enormous wound that has been growing, frankly, since the start of the internet, but mostly when internet met media, and the way that builders think, the way that thinking crashed into the media world. So if I could give you just for one moment a history lesson, because it will frame our conversation here. Back when the web was being created, the focus of it, and I was a relatively small builder. My world was the childcare world, and I kind of brought childcare online. And so now that industry exists. But there were so many larger worlds than mine, be it in dating or in jobs or in, searches, right? And the goal was to bring people together. The goal was to collaborate, to solve problems. It always was, right? So it's kind of funny that we are in the situation we are in. But when things were being created in the Valley, there were all sorts of philosophies that surrounded how we built. The first was called Don't Make Me Think. Otherwise known as Don't Make Me Read. But back when we were building websites, it was really important for us to not put anything between you and the action button, right? To buy or consume or read. So we would literally put together, from a UI perspective, heat maps of where your eye went when you were looking at a site. And then we would place a graphic, not a chunk of text, a graphic where you were going to look first and second and third that had to explain what was going on. Because, we wanted you to do X or Y thing. So the Don't Make Me Think philosophy is what a lot of people that are outside of tech building don't know. The second thing to understand is that tech is based on way more than just clicking buttons and, scrolling through things. With the invention of the iPhone, we captured emotion and real world processes in our building, right? I haven't built an iPhone. What I'm saying is that those of us that were trying to bring people together would take an iPhone and add, for example, a cha-ching, after you would make an Apple Pay purchase, or we would have you scroll a book, by turning a page. You don't have to do that on here, but that's what we're used to in the real life. It's actually called skeuomorphism. It's a crazy word, but this is how emotion began to be captured in devices. And finally, when, these tendencies, right, which were only ever established in the beginning to make processes simpler and easier for users, right? How many of us have had a life change because we found a job on a jobs board, or I found my husband online, like you
So did I.
I mean, how many of us have had these changes, right? So it was only in the beginning meant to make things seamless for you and to make things go direct to the user, to know who that user was and honor that they were a person, not a number. When these things crashed into the media world, there was some trouble because that is the place where you can't just go based on emotion. You need actual truth. You need a line. Facts really mattered. So I don't know how familiar you are with the early media world, but when media first hit the web, there was a large charge to make it free. That many moguls actually fought in the beginning in the media world. They said, don't do this, right? It's a mistake. And they were right, we should pay for good journalism. But there was the ad-based revenue model. And so everyone said, let's put that ad-based revenue model into everything and we'll become rich, right? That didn't last very long because the number of PCs being bought and the number of people going onto the web, kept going up here, and the number of content, right, was outstripping it. But at a certain point, the content, it flattened. And so media was left with a problem. They really could not get eyeballs. Suddenly everyone was a journalist. Anyone could write a point of view, or what they said was a fact somewhere. And it began to get a little scary. So grappling with low eyeballs and similar, news had to start simplifying. They had to capture you with a caption and a picture, like Huffington Post, came out and did that new layout, right? They began to, some of them moved to clickbait so that, you could rely on outrage or emotion to get a user to move into a story. We've all been down internet black holes and we've seen what happens. Publicists took advantage of it, by the way. I mean, they knew that if you went for a news source that wasn't well checked, you could build a frenzy around a story, which was marginally true. So, I mean, when all of these things crashed together, you end up with a situation where social media arose. It became the main communication device. It became where we got our news. And then it became a place that trapped us, and where we, helped, kind of look at a situation where we could be stuck in one opinion or one point of view. So I'll stop there for a minute. Is that a good history? Does that help explain the waves coming at this from two different directions?
Yeah, and I think anyone who's done any sort of media production in recent years sort of has to see some familiarity there, right? Like, so our podcast has we've never made a cent on this podcast. It's not about bringing in ad dollars, but if I want people to watch and I want people to listen, I have to sometimes have episodes that are going to like draw a bunch of attention, right? And so, I have made a conscious choice of sort of trying to alternate between guests that are going to bring in a lot of eyeballs or a lot of listens and guests that nobody else is going to pay attention to except that I'm bringing them forward. And so if you alternate those, then you can do that. And when I was the director of content for Demcast, it was the same thing. It was, well, I could publish this story that everyone's going to want to read and 1 million people are going to click on it, but everyone's publishing that story. I'd rather look at this other thing that's more interesting, but then nobody will read it. And so it's this weird sort of dynamic, even if you're not worrying about making money. It's this weird, like, you can't get anyone to pay attention to you unless you occasionally do these things that are, just a little more clickbaity.
Right. And so here's what happens, right? So we look at the Capitol and we see what just happened, right? And we see a bunch of people literally looting the place. And it's like they live in an alternate dimension. But here's the thing, they do. They actually do. And so do we. So let me keep moving along, the track of what happened here, because the wound is very hard to describe. The Band-Aids are easy to talk about. You can yell about impeachment, but the wound underneath, that's hard to describe. So everybody's talking about echo chambers, right? I'm stuck in an echo chamber. We know we are. We know that there's a problem going on, and we know it's going to outlast Trump. Fine. Things are finally, crashing down for that guy. But we all know something much worse is happening and that it's threatening democracy. And this isn't the end of it. This is the beginning. So let me try to break down what is actually happening. When we look at echo chambers, we think, wow, I was part of trapping myself in one. We've all had somebody that was just totally obnoxious on our feed or that we didn't agree with. That, we might have felt more comfortable having off our feed, right? And I have some friends that have uncomfortable points of view that I've kept on, but I'm certainly guilty of blocking some people that just got to be, too much, right? So we take we take blame for being in echo chambers. But an article I just released on Medium, and what I want to explain today is that it's actually a two-part process, and it is not our fault what is happening right now. And that's what needs to be pointed out, because I think a lot of us are like, oh, well, things are as they are, and no changes are going to be made there, so we're going to have to deal with this and just fight, right? We're going to have to put down the other side. Both sides are saying that, but the answer actually isn't necessarily that. That's the answer is fix the wound that got us in this situation. So there's a lot of crazy terms, but I'm going to try and break them down. When you enter a social media site, it's a two-part process, and the second part is the echo chamber. The first part is called an epistemic bubble. So an epistemic bubble is what happens when you become isolated. And when you enter Facebook, let's say you've never used it and you're joining today, it already knows a lot about you when you want it. It knows probably your location. It might know your spouse. Other posts might have mentioned you. Your face is probably tagged in there on somebody's picture. So you are not a stranger, right? Based off of this information, the algorithm, before you even show up, already knows where it's going to put you. It already knows it's going to categorize you based on several filters based on a political filter of liberal, conservative, or sort of in the middle, right? It knows it's going to categorize you based on your entertainment preferences, your location, your gender. It's just going to right away put you in a chamber. That's the part we don't know about or agree to. Then the echo chamber happens. Now, how does this happen? Well, first of all, when you enter, you bring a lot of people with you. The second you enter, a lot of people that know you, maybe from alumni or family, will come at you and join. So naturally, an echo chamber of people you know, right, that you generally probably agree with on a lot of things is going to form around you. Then it's going to get crazier from there, where once you're grouped, right? I mean, first you're placed in the epistemic bubble, so you're siloed. Then you are grouped, and you don't necessarily have a lot of choice in that grouping. And then, by the way, there's something like 1,500 posts from your friends every day, so you are filtered. You will only see 300 of those posts. Yeah. So algorithmically, you're seeing a very small part of what's going on. And if you are categorized, literally in the article, I show you how to show if you are categorized as, independent, liberal, or conservative. You can go onto Facebook and you can see what they've put you in, but you're only going to see that type of media. And based on the clickbait trends and what happened to media a long time ago, of course, there's huge amounts of sources pandering to both sides. So my argument in this article was that we need a warning label on social media before consuming it, the same way we put an FDA warning on cigarettes. This is not only bad for our health, it's frankly bad for democracy. And I don't see a lot of differences between, sugary soda, which can cause diabetes or heart failure, between cigarettes and between social media consumption, based on the fact that so many things happens without our knowledge or consent when we join it. Does this argument make sense?
Yeah, it does. But, part of what I'm wondering, and the same thing is true of cigarettes, for instance, it's got to take a long time, right? Because even if you know something's bad for you, like at this point, we've all experienced the hit, right? So I had a tweet go viral yesterday, and every time I got the notification that another 1,000 people liked it, it's like, it, like you feel that rush of emotion. Like, how do people even...
the warm, loving bath, right?
So how do you even if at this point we hear this is something that's bad for you, it's so baked into what we do. How do we move away from it?
Well, the first thing I would say is that you are absolutely right. It's addictive. It's a warm bath, and it is designed to hit your dopamine levels and keep them spiking. So if you haven't yet, watch The Social Dilemma. It's a beautiful documentary on Netflix, has a lot of great points. And it is about how social media is designed to be addictive and how there's very few regulations on that, especially when it comes to kids. I mean, you're a mom. I stare at my kids' consumption, especially of Nintendo in the pandemic. I'm terrified. I mean, when they get phones, will I ever get them out of it to have dinner with me? I don't know, so we are dealing with an actual addictive scenario. And yes, it is going to be very hard to wean ourselves of, frankly, what has become a habit. This is another argument as to why this is similar to cigarettes. It's a lot more pervasive and a lot creepier on the back end, but both of them are giving you an actual hit, right? That we get used to. So when cigarettes first came out, before the 1950s, by the way, they had doctors front and center on their ads, right? Smoking, they're like, this is great, right? You should do this too. But even after 1950, when people started to call them on it, 1952 was a particularly interesting year. They went wild, trying to figure out how to turn around, the research that cigarettes cause lung damage and instead promote that they were very healthy for you. So many fights for the next 40 years, were placed on every FDA attempt at a warning. And there are 11 to 13 warnings on every tobacco product at this point, right? But every attempt, every fight, from a relative of someone who died, every single thing was met with hordes of lawyers and resistance. Make no mistake, this will be the same. But something's got to happen. I mean, we're all still feeling like this is okay. And at least a warning is something. We just don't know that we're being placed in the bubble. The filters that are being applied, we don't know. And so when you look at this social media experience in two parts, right? The epistemic bubble, then the echo chamber, it is not our fault and it is dangerous. And so you're right that it's going to be very, very hard. But I'd like to say in 60 to 100 years, we'll have better safeguards against falling so deeply into this that people decide to ransack the Capitol based on a number of posts.
Yeah. Do you think, so with something like tobacco, I think that's a good analogy for us to look at, because in something like that, there's a number of different tobacco companies, but they all sort of work in concert to try to push off regulations, and and that's why we call it big tobacco, right? Like they're all working together, even though they're all competitors. Is the same true of tech? Are there companies that are more or less sort of, ethical, good, responsible citizens? I mean, it seems like, last night Twitter banned Trump, and then all of a sudden every tech company followed suit. It's like they were all just waiting for someone to give them permission to do it.
Yeah. Well,
like Pinterest, I'm sure he's really upset that he can't go on Pinterest.
yes, he's hitting fall items, and now he can't. No, I think obviously Facebook's the biggest one, but I think, anybody who uses filters to frankly hone your ad content and maximize the revenue made off of you by ads. Yes, anybody who's in that business is going to be horrified by the idea that they have to remove the filters. The filters are terrific. I love what Facebook shows me. I want to buy it. That's because they know me so well. But the deep, dark side of that is what's happened to me. And if you gave me the choice of, see dresses that you really like, or live in a bubble while the Capitol's being ransacked, I can tell you which one I would prefer. So, I mean, there are many reasons why Facebook will fight this tooth and nail. I mean, we all know it, not the least of which is that enormous amounts of revenue are captured from the way that they filter so that their ads are so wonderfully specific. But, there's other things too. There's the fact that we are used to this now. And I am a firm believer that once a paradigm shift has occurred in consumption or, systems and processes, that you have to find a way through that allows for the shift to happen, but, mediates the damage of the shift. And so, look, a warning label is a start. Right now, everybody's looking at Twitter banning him, and Facebook, I don't know how long it was for Facebook. Could have been 11, 13 days, right? I don't know how long Facebook and Instagram did, but they're like, okay, good. That's not enough. I mean, in a perfect world, you would go at them and you would say, look, your filters are a problem. Now, can they take the filters completely down? Probably not, without decimating their model. But, and this is why I say a warning label is a start, right? It's that you could begin to slightly mitigate what's happening, especially with the political filters, so that things weren't as extreme as they are. The fake news thing too, everyone's like, oh, we're fighting it. We have people out there, checking this or that source. No, the point is remove the filters, modify the filters. So at least if I'm seeing fake news, I'm seeing it from both sides, right? That is infinitely better than just having someone check it for verification, right? It's just, the issue is we all know something should be done, but we do not know the shape of that thing. And I will tell you, just having fact checkers and banning one loud, horrible guy is not enough. We have to redesign these filters. And knowing that the fight will be this bad, I'm fighting for the warning label first. I believe it should be a right to form an opinion based on information that has more balance than we have now. And when you start to frame things that way, and when you understand the extent of the filters, Yeah, we have a real problem that's only going to get worse till we start stopping with the Band-Aids and going to the wound.
Do you think there's any unintended consequences of removing the filters? I'm thinking of, like, I know that you have worked with candidates who do ads on Facebook and I've done ads on Facebook. It's amazing. When I've had a congressional candidate on, I can say, show things about this episode just to people who live in that congressional district who are liberal. And that's great. And it's exciting and it's fun. And I know I'm getting political ads targeted at me. I don't get ads for Trump. I get ads for Reverend Warnock saying, "Send me money." And so what's the fallout on the other side from our ability to use those filters to get our message or get our fundraising ads or whatever out to the populations we want to?
Let me be clear too. I actually am not arguing for removal of filters. Yes, probably they need a little work, some of the filters on there are very extreme. And also Facebook just plays willy-nilly with our data, and really needs some more oversight there. I mean, something I learned while writing this article was that at one point Facebook decided, I'm diverting here, but just give me a second, to experiment on 70,000 people without mentioning to them, seeing if they could manipulate their emotions by changing their feeds. Spoiler alert, it worked. 70,000 people who, of course, nobody reads the terms of use, right? 70,000 people, ended up totally having horrible weeks because Facebook was literally playing with their feet. So obviously we need more oversight and to take a look at the problem, but I'm not arguing for removal of filters. That's the thing where I say there's a paradigm shift coming. There's a shift in consumption. We got to keep the shift moving, but we've got to make sure the ground we're standing on doesn't blow up either, right? And so where was I going with this? Filters are good, but they have to be used the right way. I don't think any of us realized that Trump's team back in 2016, and I'm hoping people have read about the Cambridge Analytica scandal because that is nightmarishly hard to explain. But basically, the most awful part of that is that Trump's team was targeting an enormous amount of voters with very specific messages, right? Little Haiti residents got one message that was targeted to them. The other neighborhoods got specific messages targeted to them. And those messages were don't vote. That's when things get bad, because I think we assume that people are going to go out and they're going to say, okay, vote for me and here's why, or vote for her and here's why, and that the filters will be used in a way that is generally indicative of a healthy democracy. But people can go on and they can break the democracy by saying don't vote. And at that point, it's up to us to decide, what do we stand for? Who are we? Are we going to let the ground blow up because we're willing to, allow this to continue without looking at the problem? And, that's why I say, again, address the wound, not the Band-Aids. And again, I'm just offering suggestions. I don't think we should remove the filters, but it's the point of a warning, is to say, where there's warnings that news could be fake already. So this isn't too far to go further and say this tool might be used to sway you, against voting. This tool could be harmful to your health because you'll disappear down a TikTok all for 6 hours.
That's never happened.
I'm tired of the doom scrolling. I can't read another article about how it's all over. I am willing to be the idiot that wades into the field with some thoughts on what we might be able to do. And, filters can be used for good and for bad. So let's talk about solutions.
Do you think that we are far enough into social media, and social media is such a big part of our life that it should be a bigger thing in the government? I don't know if I think there should be a secretary of social media in the cabinet, but it's some sort of really high level commission or office or a committee in Congress or something, because it does seem like this thing that too many people at the high levels of government don't understand. They might have staff that understands, but
Right.
they're not thinking about it in a systemic way.
I think that's an awesome idea. Where my brain was going was around the area of rights. There's something here in that I deserve the right to not be put in an epistemic bubble / that then leads to an echo chamber. I deserve the right to be able to make a balanced opinion. There are all sorts of directions you can take it in, from oversight to, I don't know, constitutional amendments. I'm not the person that would ever know that, but like, there's things that, yeah, we should be talking about and that we should do. But it's very systemic. I mean, we should know right now that what is being done is not enough. I think the biggest thing I want to get across is that just banning this guy, it's a Band-Aid, right? Banning Trump is a Band-Aid. Fact-checking more articles is a Band-Aid. It's not going to get at all of the underlying things, and the wound underneath it all. Mm-hmm. A lot of this started actually too with Limbaugh and Fox News, which this predated, some of the internet periods, but truly scary how that really formed. There was a early set of philosophies at Fox News on how you could present the world as binary. So if you presented something as a simple story between good and evil, it was easier to manipulate someone. This is actually the thinking behind cults. Radicalization is wild thinking, right? But, it's very, very telling now that, there's a large, connection between QAnon and Fox News. I mean, it's very easy to start thinking that person who disagrees with me, which Limbaugh did nonstop in the early days of Fox. It's very easy to present that person as evil and not to be trusted. And I think the key thing that I'm talking about here is trust. When trust breaks down between people, between, citizens and their government, all's lost. And the thing that's really scary is that in social media, the epistemic bubble, right, silos you. And then the echo chamber removes your trust of people that don't think like who's inside the chamber. We're all in one right now. And what's even wackier is that inside that chamber, the most extreme opinions are going to win. It's kind of like online reviews. You don't write something about a middling experience. You write something about an awful or an awesome experience. And the most strident voices win. And so we are entering this world where it's at first it was Fox News. Now it's way more persuasive with the siloing of media, into clickbait and all these different sides, just desperate for your eyeballs. But social media has a problem where people outside of your bubble are seen as evil. They are not to be trusted. They are deplorable, for example, is what I see out of mine. They might see something, radicalized, Antifa on their side, but that breaks down trust in such a horrifying way. And then when that trust breaks down, it's a steady snowball down a hill to the point where you're so suspicious, perhaps, and I am not justifying what happened. It was disgusting, but, you might break down your trust with government to the point where you feel it's important to show up in person. It is terrifying to me that the cult-like behavior we're seeing is normal to the people that did it. It feels normal. They were told by their president to do X and Y and Z. How horrible is that? That somebody would take advantage of what's going on. And so we can go to we can do whatever we want about Trump, but we have to look at the fact that this is going on and it will continue going on. Who's after Trump that's ready to radicalize this base again? And how are we going to not see it because we are in our own silos and bubbles? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you mentioned kids earlier. I think it makes it an extremely difficult time to parent. So you're a mother of sons. I'm a mother of sons. It is very difficult, even in kids that I try very, very hard to make sure that they are thinking of people as human beings. And they are at an age where they think about superheroes and supervillains. And we are in a world in which everyone is saying, this is good, this is bad.
Yeah.
And so, if I say Trump to them, they boo and hiss. And no, he's a person too. We're going to, like, we are people, we have different ideas, but it's hard because of the way that it feels like the other side doesn't see me the way that I don't see them as people. And so it makes it a really, really difficult situation in which to parent and to try to raise children that are not going to be, sort of just in their own silos. I don't know if you're also experiencing that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, like for the longest time, my twins are running around saying the bad orange man. And then like everything is Trump's fault in this household, according to them. And, of course they hear me and Dan talking and they understand that something awful's going on. But, it is weird how we've gotten very binary, the good, evil binary thing. It's just something to be aware of. When you talk of this underlying wound, it is important to understand things used to not be presented this way. Back in the era of Dan Rather and Katie Couric, it was just a whole different world, right? In terms of how news was presented and consumed. The good evil binary wasn't a big part of that. I think though, that there might be somebody who's swept along into a movement, who is in a bubble without knowing it, an echo chamber without knowing it. And then there's Trump, who just absolutely, I have revised my opinion from sociopath to psychopath, like absolutely takes full advantage with zero perception of the fact that people are dying because of his motions. And that's when you get somebody who is truly terrifying, a potential dictator. I mean, the fact that one guy was wearing an Auschwitz sweatshirt.
Yeah.
Sorry. How do you do that? I mean, then there's that type of person who really wants it all to burn down. And that's not okay. Yeah. As a mother, and I know you're a mother, I'm worried about social media consumption. I am also extremely worried about this radicalization situation going on, because when you have people on the margins of any situation like that, I mean, well, they just stormed the Capitol, right? They stormed the Capitol. What were they thinking? But, I mean, again, we could talk all day. Outrage is literally what I drink for breakfast at this point. But I don't want to read another article about how America's going down the tubes. This is the time when we have to get up and fight. I love this country. And I don't like that every now and then I'm like, I hate this country. Blah, blah, blah. I love it. I love it. And I will fight for it with whatever I've got. And I think we all need to stand up if we value it and fight too. I'm not going to move to Canada. I'm going to stay here and fight. And I don't know. I mean, right now I've written an article. Who knows what else is possible? But whatever we can do, we should try to do.
I agree. Absolutely. We could probably talk all day about this. There is another topic I want to get to that I know is near and dear to your heart and mine, and that is that the jobs report for December came out this week and showed that not only had we lost jobs in America, but that 100% of that loss was among women.
Oh, goody. Well, we all knew that.
So I know that you have been thinking a lot during this pandemic period about women and about what women have really lost in the workforce in this time.
I cannot describe my agony and despair at that statement, which we all knew was true. I also can't describe to you how impotent I feel, just being stuck, in the situation that we are. This pandemic is the worst thing that's happened to women in my lifetime. We are leaving the workforce in droves. I spend my days cooking, cleaning, and virtually, dragging my kids through class, my 9-year-old boy twins, and I'm sure you're dealing with the same thing. One thing I've decided to focus on, because again, I could cry with you over it, but let's talk. I think we could all focus on getting a woman into office to offset this. So maybe while this horrific situation is happening, we can use the time as women, because let's face it, we're going to have to fix our own problem. That's real fair, right? Real fair. But we're going to have to fix our own problem. And so let's get more and more of our own into low-level seats that they can use as springboards to higher and higher seats. Let's do that fast. Let's make it, frankly, as diverse as possible. As a white woman at this point, I'm like sitting around like, oh my gosh, the lens that I've been allocated has allowed me to get further, and what can I do to make up for that with my friends that are diverse? And we should try to stack the bench, right? So that when we do go back to work, or frankly, when we try to re-enter, right? Because what mom hasn't taken a break and faced the agony of re-entry, right? We have legislation, in the wings from these women that might help us mitigate the damage. But I'm just so tired as a woman in this country. I will say that I am so tired of the misogyny surrounding us everywhere in the industries that we are conspicuously not in because of broken funnels, in the president's ranking of us from 1 to 10, in the the film industry's depiction of us as the girlfriend, wife or sister. I can't take it anymore. And I'm furious that this situation is so extreme that we can't focus on something that, God, we should have solved this 50 years ago. Yeah. And we haven't. Why isn't this fixed?
Yeah, well, and it took 100 years of women having the vote before we even got a vice president who was a woman, right?
Yes, yes.
Which, thank God, we did.
Oh, Kamala. Between Lizzo and Kamala, this is how I managed to get through my day. But it's just, this is wild, right? The fact that we're so far behind, I just worry that we're slipping backwards at an alarming rate, and there are too few people willing to stand up and fight. That's been a lot of what I've been yelling about over here, right into the void. But, I can't offer more advice other than please stop doom scrolling and try to fix something. Be it just getting a woman into office, or I don't know, helping one family survive this, or, pointing fingers at the real problem when it comes to this, social media issue that we have. We can all do something.
Yes. I think that is probably a good place to wrap up. We can all do something. We should all do something. So on our website, I will post links to your social media, because everyone should follow social media and your website, but also this Medium piece, so that people will look at it. And I think it is important that we all, if the warning labels aren't going to be there right away, then we should all sort of have a mental warning label every time we get on Facebook, Twitter, etc., and just remind ourselves we're being shown certain content and not being shown other content, and we just need to be aware of it. And the more aware you are of it, the more you can sort of deal with what that means.
Oh, thanks, Kelly. What you do is you bring real attention to situations that I think are important. So I find comfort in your work. Thank you for not just sitting around and doom scrolling.
Yeah, I'd be under a bottle of wine somewhere if I tried to do that. So everybody do stuff, take action, you'll feel better.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Thanks, Genevieve.
Thank you.